With the critical acclaim of Babel and the success of the Poppy War trilogy, Rf Kuang has established herself as one of the most upcoming voices in literary, historical, and fantasy fiction. She came out with her fifth novel, YellowFace, and I read it on the day that it came out because Kuang is one of my favorite authors. But unfortunately, the only question that was left in my mind after I finished reading YellowFace was, what was the point of this novel? Unfortunately, though YellowFace has a very promising premise, it fails when it comes to execution and ultimately ends up with a bland, mundane novel that really serves no purpose. Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is RupkathaBhattacharjeeofficial and you're watching my channel, which is named after me because I lack creativity. In today's video, I'll be reviewing YellowFace by Rf Kuang. Now, YellowFace is a novel that I was very excited to read, but unfortunately, after reading it, I had very mixed feelings about it. Now, when I read Babel, there were some aspects of Babel, especially its research-based writing style, which made it very interesting to me despite its demerits. But when it comes to YellowFace, there is nothing holding this novel together. Kuang's research skills are not very applicable to a novel like YellowFace, which is a weird mix between satire and literary fiction. Before I talk more about it, why don't I share the synopsis with you? So YellowFace is told through the eyes of Juniper Song Haywood, a semi-failure author who steals the manuscript of her kind of friend Athena Liu, a very popular Chinese-American author. When Juniper steals this manuscript, she rebrands it under her own name, edits it, and then publishes it as written by Juniper Song, using her middle name to create this false front for naive readers who don't know that she's actually a white woman and not an Asian American. YellowFace is marketed as a satire which discusses the dark sides of the publishing industry, and I will discuss both its merits and demerits. Let's go through its positive sides first. Now, there is no denying that Rf Kuang has a very strong command over the English language as a whole. She definitely knows how to create a very compelling read which will keep the reader hooked to their seat and reading till the end of the novel. I myself read it in one sitting. It was intriguing, compelling, and ultimately unputdownable. But that is where the merits of YellowFace end. Even though it has a very fast pacing and a simple writing and reading style, YellowFace fails to shine through. One of the first things that I hate about Kuang's writing is how she lacks subtlety. Her writing is very ham-handed with her own personal opinions that she loves to shove through the reader's throat and doesn't really give the reader a time to breathe and form their own opinions in her writing. Kuang, apart from her very heavy research skills and somewhat alright writing skills, fails to create compelling characters, which I believe are one of the cornerstones for a novel to be successful. In Babel, despite having a pretty huge cast of characters, Kuang failed to make any of them memorable or worth rooting for, and she does the same in YellowFace. Though the main character of YellowFace, Juniper Song or Juniper Haywood, is supposed to be very unlikable, there are no other characters in the novel itself that do not serve as mouthpieces for Kuang to share her own thoughts and opinions. One of the things that really strikes me in YellowFace is how this is a novel which is only readable if you are very into bookish discourse or chronically online all the time. To put it in one word, YellowFace is very meta. Before I move into all that, I would like to talk more about Kuang's own opinions in YellowFace. So there is no denying that Athena Liu, the deceased author whose manuscript has been stolen, is a self-insert for Kuang. I mean, even if you know nothing about Rf Kuang, it is pretty noticeable how Kuang writes herself through Athena. Athena Liu is this 20-something author who gained popularity right out of college, is charming, eloquent, well-liked, beautiful, and honestly the epitome of what every author should be. She is unproblematic, she is well-loved and by commercial readers, but also well-received by critics and other people. And Kuang uses Athena to talk to her own critiques. Moreover, YellowFace itself is a book that is written in order to respond to the criticism that Rf Kuang gets. There is an excerpt in the novel where Juniper, who has stolen the manuscript and has published it under her own name, is getting criticized for her own representation of Taiwanese people, and that, if put into regards with Kuang's own criticisms that she received publishing the Poppy War trilogy, it really puts into perspective how Kuang has written this book not as a way of saying anything, but as a way of arguing against her own critiques. Kuang's lack of subtlety shines through even more when she's presenting the perspective of the main character, because Kuang makes her cartoonishly racist. Now, I wouldn't say people like Juniper Song or Juniper Haywood, who are harmlessly racist, do not exist, but the way Kuang puts her makes it seem like Kuang would not let the reader shape their own opinion about the main character. Kuang is always present with short lines that go like, I am not a racist, but insert something comically racist over there from the perspective of the main character. Now, I think unlikable characters rarely ever work when put with an amateur writer, but a sign of good writing while writing unlikable characters is to portray that through their actions and not their own internal monologues, because thoughts and actions can have a dissonance between them, and Kuang fails to do exactly that. All of Juniper's negativity or negative traits are usually portrayed only through Juniper's internal monologues or her own thoughts regarding her actions. Anyways, another thing that I disliked again about Kuang's writing with respect to her inability to remain subtle is how most of her characters exist as mouthpieces to her own opinions. Her characters are not three-dimensional, round, developed people. They are an amalgamation of Twitter threads and articles about racism joined together and put into a human body. These characters only represent their viewpoints in what I would call internet language and really sound like chronically online people. Now, Kuang does, like the entire point of YellowFace is to poke fun at chronically online people, but at the end of the day, it only makes Kuang sound the same, sound chronically online. It seems like kind of problems that would only affect someone who has gotten a Yale or Oxford education and lives in a first world country. Another thing that I previously mentioned about YellowFace being very meta, what I meant was that for a normal reader who isn't really online on book circles or BookTube, Book Talk, Book Twitter, anything with the word book and another social media site attached to its end, is that this book would be very unappealing to them, because YellowFace heavily relies on the reader's own knowledge about what happens on online literary circles, about cancel culture and how that affects authors as a whole and not only actors and actresses or other people engaged in the entertainment sector. Moving on, another thing that I absolutely despised about YellowFace was how repetitive it was and how it really hammered home a singular point without any finesse or any nuance. Now, the main point of YellowFace was to discuss privilege, but it only ever discussed privilege when it came to race, but not when it came to class, able-bodiedness, and other aspects that do contribute to an individual's singular privilege. To be very frank, YellowFace is a very one-sided narrative rather than an overarching novel that considers all perspectives of the certain scenario, in this case, which is the publishing industry. I found that though Kuang really tried to separate her own viewpoint from the very one-sided, shallow narratives that are perpetuated on Twitter, but Kuang, at the end of the day, ended up sounding like a very bitter person making another Twitter thread trying to fight with her critiques. And honestly, that is the worst part of this novel. The worst part is that Kuang always writes with her criticisms in mind. She writes in a way that she assumes that the reader is sitting there typing out a 94-page essay about how Kuang should never write another book again, and this aspect really shines through her writing. Another thing that I found necessity to comment on was that despite YellowFace being a satire, it really misses one of the most crucial pillars of satire, which is being humorous. YellowFace is not humorous in nature. It does not employ a humorous style, nor does it employ a humorous narrative. It's not funny. It's a plain, bitter and shallow novel that tries to sound deeper than it truly is. It is not groundbreaking, truly. If I had to call something groundbreaking, I would say Babel served as something new in the fantasy genre. It shed light on new voices in fantasy. But YellowFace, on the other hand, is not a diamond in the rough. It is another flint stone which serves no other purpose than lighting fires and being the point of community discourse for a few days before people forget about it and move on to another novel again. The thing about YellowFace is that it lacks passion. It lacks emotion and it lacks feelings. Kuang fails to catch the reader's attention when it comes to her characterization, when it comes to making the reader feel something. Overall, in my opinion, instead of RFK evolving as a writer, strengthening her base, her writing style, her characterization, she has definitely devolved in her journey as a writer. While the Poppy War trilogy was action-packed with emotions, with nice characterization, and it really had its merits, Kuang's writing fell flat when it came to Babel. But even in Babel, what held the novel together was Kuang's thorough research and very passionate writing style. Now, when it comes to YellowFace, which is not a fantasy in any form or any way, Kuang's research skills are inapplicable here, therefore not holding this dumpster fire of a novel together, and her passion and her emotions are lacking. Like I said 100 times previously, this novel is extremely shallow. Summing up everything that I said, YellowFace was a 2-star novel for me. I originally rated it 3 stars, but after this entire review that I would not dare to call a rant review, but rather a critique review, I have lowered my rating 1 star down. Now, why did I give it 2 stars despite pointing out so many demerits in the novel? I enjoyed it at certain point. It was very interesting to read. As you may know, I like to remain updated with every sort of community discourse that is going on. So I could really see the point that Kuang was trying to make, despite the fact that she failed to make it in a proper manner. And secondly, it was entertaining to go through this novel at certain times. Kuang's writing style is compact, it is precise, comprehensive, and easy to read. If you still wish to read this novel, you will probably finish it in a singular sitting. But unfortunately for laid-back readers that are not very updated with community discourse, for readers who are looking for a meaningful novel rather than a novel that is simply Kuang throwing stones in a glass house, YellowFace will not be the novel for you. Honestly, I had extremely high hopes for YellowFace. I was ready to read this searing novel which would really shed light on the publishing industry's dark sides, but unfortunately it just repeated the things that we readers already know. The publishing industry is filled with industry plants. It is not a very welcoming space to marginalized voices. Publishing is very draining, exhausting, and it takes a lot of time, and it is not very friendly to new and upcoming readers. That's it. These were the 4 points that Kuang repeated multiple times through multiple perspectives in her novel, without any nuance, without any finesse, without any proper execution, making YellowFace a completely skippable novel and not the blockbuster hit that we would have hoped that it would be. I hope you enjoyed this review. In my next video, I will be reviewing Bunny by Mona Awad, hoping that I do finish reading it within this week. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, share and subscribe, and leave a comment down below if you're hoping to discuss about this book or about Babel or the Poppy War trilogy, Kuang's other novels with me, because honestly I have read each and every one of them, and those novels were the ones that solidified Kuang as a very interesting author and a personal favorite of mine. But with YellowFace, perhaps it is now time to revoke the favorite status from her. Anyways, thank you for watching, be safe and goodbye.